local and state issues and more coming up next with Dale Pflug, John Larsen, and Barry Foster. Don't go away. And welcome to the Barry Foster Show, coming to you from the Ridge Floor Studios in the City of Charm, beautiful downtown Avon Park. As always, if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, people you'd like us to talk to, or a subject you'd like us to broach, please put them in the comments below or send us an email at thebarryfostershow@gmail.com. I want to thank our fine and brave sponsors, Ridge Florist, of course, the best floral arrangements anywhere. Go on, you can find them online at ridgefloristinc.com. You can give them a call at 863-382-4477 or stop on by the shop, 111 Memorial Drive, just north of the Sebring Parkway. Tell them Barry sent you by. Beautiful original arrangements for any occasion. Nell, Steve, all of them can take, Buzzy can take care of you, okay? Also, our great sponsors, Strangely Warmed Coffee, the best coffee on the planet. In the studios, Dale Pflug, John Larsen. And, John, one thing we were asked to kind of look at, and we haven't gotten to it, so we'll get to it today, is the whole situation with the golf course at Harder Hall.
Yeah, we attended the meeting probably about, 6-8 weeks ago now, where they had 3 different organizations that put forth proposals for a golf course and taking over the golf course that's out there. Because that golf course has been losing over $100,000 a year for many years. And the city has had to pony up that shortfall. So financially, it's been a disaster for the city to keep that golf course.
Yes.
And so when Blackman's came in and said, we would like to take control of the golf course because we feel that the golf course and the hotel need to be one thing so that they could have their people that are staying at the hotel go across the street, play golf, whatever, come back to the hotel. And that went back and forth for a number of weeks. And then finally they had a vote. We were there and they voted, I think it was 4-2 or whatever the number was.
4-1, I think.
4-1, whatever, to give the Blackmans control the golf course. And now, for whatever reason, and I read this story, and it's a pretty lengthy story in the paper, I think it was on Sunday, Sunday's edition. And the problem is, they said that they put communications out to the Blackman attorney. The Blackman attorney didn't return their calls or didn't communicate with them, and so on. So now, I call it having a hissy fit. The city decides to put it back on the market again and let people submit proposals to take over the golf course. But if they don't give it to the Blackmans like they agreed to back a month or so ago, it's going to create another furor, I think, between the Blackmans and the city of Sebring. I don't know why. The place has sat there for 30 years, empty, deteriorating. They've made tons and tons of progress on the renovations of the hotel. This past week, there was a big story in the paper about the windows and doors that they finally installed were specially made to be period window and doors for that facility.
Wow.
And so they're doing everything they can, spending gosh knows how much money. I have to believe it's in the millions so far.
Oh, yeah.
To renovate the hotel. And they wanted the golf course to be part of that package. And now here we go again, back and forth with the city council. So I don't know.
What's the status of the golf course? Is it currently active?
Oh, yes.
It's the municipal golf course.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. When I first arrived, Harder Hall was all put together in one big package. And it was open. Harder Hall had their own golf course. Okay. They had their own package plant, which they used for water and sewer. They had everything they wanted to. And then it closed. It went out of business. And they brought in this company, this guy named Lowell Fricker came in from this big savings and loan company. And their idea was to do a Victor Posner, to cut it up into pieces and to sell the pieces off, okay, and make the money that they needed to make, all right? So they cut it up and they sold the golf course off and they sold property off. In fact, the property that the Inn on the Lakes is now built was part of the Harder Hall complex. Mm-hmm. And they sold off the package. They sold everything off. And the last part that they couldn't sell was the hotel itself, the hotel proper. and they had probably a dozen different suitors come in, and it was going to be everything from an adult congregate living facility to a 5-star hotel with a helipad on the top. They had all these different companies that were going to do this, going to do that, and they'd come in, do a few things, and then leave. Like one company came in and they tore down what was called the servants' quarters, where all the people who worked at the hotel lived there, and they found, I think, the biggest bee's nest in the history of the state of Florida. So it was huge. They had plenty of time to build their nest there, And another company came in and they filled in the little swimming pool they used to have there. I mean, they went in and they did all of these things to it, and little by little, I think they deteriorated the desirability of this. And I thought when the Blackmans came in, they redid a big hotel, the Vinoy in St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg.
Yeah. That they've done some other things. They've done some historic renovations. I thought they were the last best hope. And they had, as the story goes, they had made this deal with the city because no one wanted to buy and run the historic Harder Hall golf course. So they sold it to, guess what? A development company. And all the golf course now are houses. And the people who lived around the golf course were really mad. Said, I bought a house to live in a golf course, not to live in a community. Said, well, you should have bought the course because it's gone. And so in fact, I used to work at the 19th hole there at the Harder Hall golf course, and So they made a deal with the city and said, look, as John pointed out, they have been losing maybe not 100.
Oh, I think maybe close to $100,000. Yeah,
maybe hundreds of $1,000.
Wow!
Because I've talked to a guy who knows about golf courses, and he just kind of laughs and shakes his head and said, they've lost a lot more money, but they've been able to cover it up by charging other different departments, and it doesn't look like it's coming out of the. I remember when I was covering the city council, and they said, "Oh, you know what? If we just had all these new golf carts that we could rent out, we'd be able to get more people." And then they bought all these new golf carts, and they said, "Well, we're going to need a new cart barn too to put them in." And I mean, it's like, we'll get a free horse, and now we got to buy a barn for it. But anyway, they did all this stuff, and they just continue to bleed members. They just did. And the LPGA, the Ladies Professional Golf Association, used to be located in Sebring. And they had an LPGA tournament there, which brought in money. And then they had this giant youth tournament, which brought in money. And both of those disappeared. And so, and there was a time when they found out that there was a pie-shaped wedge of private property that went into the golf course. And when you were putting on the eighth green or whatever it was, you were actually putting across private property, and so the city had and ended up paying a horrible amount of money for this little wedge of property so for years and years and years they've spent money on this. And John, I'll tell you, it may be more than the $100,000, and over the course of the years they have probably spent more than $1 million, or maybe even millions of dollars. And so the Blackmans came in and said, look, rent this to us for $1 a year. All right. You make $1, you lose no more money. We'll take care of all the rest of it. We're going to bring in this high-end golf course designer who's going to design this great course, even though it's small. Okay. We can make it challenging. Of course, the guys are going to want to play, and we'll have all these high-end people come in, and they'll play at the golf course. They'll eat at the hotel. We might take the Caddy Shack and make it a better restaurant than it is now, which caused them to have apoplexy. And they lobbied against the Blackmans. We saw it in many of the meetings where they're going to fire us all. They're going to get rid of us. And I don't know what they were going to do. They wanted to make a nicer restaurant for nicer people to spend more money than probably you and I, probably more than 3 of us would spend on lunch if you added it all together, But they thought they had a deal. And I remember there used to be this, the county attorney for Highlands County was a guy named Bob Dunty. and there was a deal that they thought they had this deal made, and when it came down to, they hadn't written anything down. And Bob Dunny said, well, we had a gentleman's agreement, but we fell one gentleman short, you know? And I think that the Blackmans feel like, hey, the way it's presented, they're up there going, wait, whoa, we had this agreement. And they said, well, nobody wrote anything down. I'm not sure that we all understand the same thing. There seemed, if I was watching from the outside, I would look at it and say, have you ever heard the term gaslighting? Okay? Because there seems to be a lot of gaslight in here. Okay? And I didn't go with Scott Natelick behind closed doors. I didn't sit in the hotel and make the deal. I didn't go to any of those meetings. I don't know. But the way they act, they're either very good actors, okay, or they really feel like they've been ill-used. That they were told one thing and now are going to get something else. And I've done news long enough to know it, and I've said this to Sandra more than once. There's something else going on here. I'm not sure what it is, but there's something else going on here. This one guy came forward with this great deal, and they said, you know, he's got a great plan, but he doesn't have any money. And the Tourist Development Commission has come forward with this idea that they want to take the golf course and make it not a golf course anymore, but they want to make a multi-use complex with pickleball courts and frisbee golf courses and all this other stuff. And I said this, he said, if you think it's not making any money now, how, you know, what do you think is going to be the upkeep on that if they do that? And when I confronted the TDC chief consultant, that they don't hire her, she's just a consultant, but she's, oh, this is just an informational thing. This is just an informational thing. And if I can quote our current governor, horse manure, okay? I'm looking at it, you know, to quote the great philosopher Robert Zimmerman, you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows, okay? And I'm looking at this, and I said, wait. And so I watched, John read it in the paper, I watched the city council meeting, and they were talking about, and there's been no news coverage of this at all. The city council, the city administrator haven't said, you know, we keep reaching out to the Blackmans and we get nothing. And there's been no newspaper article saying, well, the city council reached out and they're getting silenced. They're getting silenced. And one of the council members, and I only watch them briefly anymore. I've really kind of given up on the city of Sebring, but they said, well, you know, the silence has been deafening. That's the most distressing thing. And I feel like, you know, the poor relations, because there's a guy that has a radio station who's a radio show who's a county commissioner. He reached out and Blackman came on the program with him. I have a dear friend of mine who works here in the city of Charm, and she says, oh yeah, I reached out. I've reached out to him 3 times. He won't respond to me. I said, you know, Mr. Blackman, you know what? Can you give me a statement? Can you tell me what happened? Nothing. I get nothing. So I don't know what the city claims. The city claims they've reached out to him and his people, and they've gotten a response. His response is, that's not true. So I don't know. All I know is this, is that I think after watching, there was this guy named Avi Limor who was going to come in after it closed down, and he was going to repair the place, and he was doing a great job. Guy by the name of Gary Puckett, not the guy from the Union Gap, okay? Canadian developer, had worked so hard on this, and I knew Gary very, very well, and he was in the Sebring Historic Preservation Commission, and but Avi Limor was killed in a plane crash, and after he died, there was this long string of suitors. Everybody was going to do. It was like, I'll say this. To me, they crapped the place up. Everybody did a little more work. Like the grand ballroom had this stuff called Pecky cypress, which is this really sought after wood, which you can't get now. Okay, but you could get it back then. And somebody took all the Pecky cypress off the walls and disappeared with it. You know, I mean, there've been story after story after story of all the bad things that have happened to it. So now the city of Sebring has said, we're going to throw out all the bids, the Blackman bid, the TDC bid, and this other guy whose name I can't remember, throw them all. And we're going to put out a 30-day, what they call RFP, a request for proposals to see who wants to do what with it. And it just sounds to me like, and they've said, well, there's some other interest out there. We've heard some rumors of other interest. It sounds to me like somebody's brother's cousin's best friend from college wants to get in there.
Well, the one guy is that guy from New Jersey. And when he got up and made his proposal, he's only managed or controlled or whatever, one golf course.
Yes.
And yet he's got this golf course management company that he wants to come in from New Jersey to take over the golf course here. I didn't think his proposal, he may be a nice person. I'm not saying anything against that, but I didn't think his proposal stacked up against what the Blackmans presented with their professional golf designer there telling the council what and how they were going to go about renovating the course and manage the course. So I just think there was a lot of bad blood even after that initial vote. And so now Stewart's the one that put this, to reject the previous votes, and let's have a new vote in the next 30 days.
City Councilman Josh Stewart, who's
Right.
also the council president.
Right. Yes. So, I mean, it just sounds like, and I don't know why, because you've been playing games with this building for 30 years.
Sure.
Finally, you got somebody who's got the pockets deep enough to do the job and finish the job and get it back on the market. You would think you would fall all over yourself to make sure that this guy got what he wanted as part of the package.
Well, that's a question I wanted to ask Mr. Blackman, because I guess I'm still the news director. Even after leaving the radio, I'm the news director still. And somebody said, well, you know what I heard? I said, no, what have you heard? He said, I heard that the Blackmans have put in for both federal and state grants for multi-millions of dollars, and the Blackmans are out of money to do the Harder Hall project. I said, well, I had not heard that.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, go look it up. In addition to all the other things I've done, I have not had a chance to look it up. But I just want to ask Mr. Blackman straight up. Say, somebody has said this to me. Is there any truth to this? I just like to hear. I told him, and I've told him on a couple, 3 occasions, I will give you open field to run. I will let you say, I just got some questions, and I'll give you a chance to tell your side of the story. And the last time he communicated with me, he says, Mr. Foster, every time I say something, I feel like I'm then the target of all of this, these comments and everything. He says, I don't want to. It seems like every time I open my mouth, I stir up the pot.
Well, the other thing is they're also renovating and have renovated the Wachovia Bank building downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an article in the paper last week that said they were within about a week or two of opening that facility. It's going to be business offices, possibly a restaurant in there. But they've put, I don't know how many untold millions of dollars in that Wachovia Bank building to do what they've done to it. So, I mean, it's not like the Blackmans have come in and said, we're going to penny pinch this whole. No, they've taken on a big swath of buildings that have sat empty here for years, not generating any tax money back to the city, which you would think as a politician, I love your tax money. I don't care about you, but I love your tax money. And here they are kind of throwing, roadblocks in front of the Blackmans to complete this whole project. It's hard for me to understand why.
And the thing that I find very curious is that within the city of Sebring, there's a city council, but there's a subset organization called the Community Redevelopment Agency. And the Community Redevelopment Agency operates on tax monies. It's called TIF, Tax Increment Financing, or a TIF. And what they do is and I'm going to pick some numbers out of thin air. They pick a baseline, which is 5 mills. And then if the millage goes to 6 mills, that extra mill goes into the Community Redevelopment Agency. And if it goes to 7 mills, then that 2 mills go in. Anything above 5 goes into the CRA. And they built quite a war chest. And there are at least 2 buildings of which I'm aware that were basically given away to a developer with the proviso that you'll take this building. I think they sold it to him for $1. Maybe it was $100. I don't know. It was a token amount. You take this money and then you bring this building up to code. That is, all the wiring is up to code, all the plumbing is up to code, all this other stuff is up to code, and then you can have the building. Like, no one said to me, Barry, I'll tell you what, we have this house built in the 1990s, and it was racked asunder by the heirs, and so we have to sell it. So we'll give it to you for $1 if you'll bring it up to code. Where do I sign? Where do I sign for that? All right. And I wouldn't say these people necessarily are friends of elected officials. I wouldn't say that at all. But I would wonder, how does one get a deal like that? And one of the guys responsible for that is now a city councilman, by the way. So I look at this whole situation, and I've watched them agonize with Harder Hall. They were. In fact,
how many years has it been?
30 years. 30 anyway.
30 years
30
it's been
years.
empty. Yes.
I moved here more than that, because I moved here in 86 and it closed in 86. Okay. So it's been almost 40 years, or 35 years anyway. Maybe more like 37. But anyway, I've watched them. They were going to tear it. One former fire chief came to me and slapped me on the back and said, "You're going to see the biggest controlled burn you ever saw in your whole life." And they were going to burn it down because the land was worth more than the hotel.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And they were going to burn his entire, he's no longer the police chief there. The fire chief there. That's just been a long time ago. But I mean, I've watched them struggle through this over and over and over. I think the biggest mistake they made, and hindsight's 20/20 vision, is allowing Lowell Fricker and his company to cut it up. I think they would have had a better chance doing the whole, selling the whole
Package.
shebang,
Yeah.
than what they did. But it's done now. But I watched this, and I've watched for, as John would say, at least 30 years, watched them struggle through this. Because Avi Lamore, it defaulted to his wife, and to quote somebody who was in a position to know, said, "Well, she was crazy." Okay, well, just because you're good at something doesn't mean your wife is good at something. Okay, and conversely, just because your wife's a great cook doesn't make you a great cook. Just saying. Okay, so after he was gone, it sat, and they put out for requests for proposals and try to sell it and try to at least make their money back. I mean, they went through this whole, they've been going through this rigmarole, and we're here where we are now. And I just get this feeling in my heart of hearts that something has a very bad aroma to it. But I don't live in Sebring anymore. It's not my problem. And what I don't know if the citizens, again, I don't think the citizens care. Citizens have been paying taxes, and even though the golf course has been losing money hand over fist, there was not screaming headlines on the radio or screaming headlines in the newspaper saying Sebring Golf Course loses $200,000 again. And because at some point there is a community long ago in a galaxy far, far away, where they have not one but 2 golf courses. And whether you play golf or not, you pay assessments for that golf course.
Yes.
Okay? You pay for that golf course, whether you play there or not. And so if you're in the city of Sebring, whether you play golf or not, you're paying for that course. Or you were, well, I guess you still are. You're still paying for that course, whether or not they make money or lose money. I guess as long as they're losing money, because they're putting tax dollars in it.
Well, like you said earlier, though, the city did not broadcast those numbers. They kept those numbers buried. So you would have to really spend some serious time to dig into the information in order to find that how much money they're losing on the golf course. So they hid that information, and the people in this day and age, everybody's in an instant news cycle. If you don't hear it, it doesn't exist. All right. And if you don't read it in the paper, it doesn't happen, and so on. So it's there. But again, the thing that's hard for me to understand, when that thing is finished, number one, it'll generate head and bed tax. Number two, they'll have to pay property taxes, which I think will be tremendous. Number three, they were going to employ, I think he told us, around 75 people when it's done to run the kitchen, the restaurant, maids, business, whatever.
How many rooms is this supposed to have?
Oh my gosh.
I think that's 70 rooms, 60 or 70 rooms.
Yeah.
But again, now understand this is an old hotel, so the rooms are different
Yes.
because in the olden days, when you went and stayed in a hotel, you did not stay in your room. You didn't stay in there and watch TV. Okay,
Right.
You didn't hang around your room.
Bed.
Your room was to change clothes and to sleep. And when you went down, like I'll pick the Kenilworth Lodge, you went down to the great room to meet all the other visitors that were here. Now the Kenilworth has this large vista, looks out over Lake Jackson, and people would go out and sit on the rockers and speak with each other. There was a little ping pong game. There was some games down there you could play, but generally you came down to either go someplace and visit someplace, or to meet the other guests and have fellowship with the other guests. The idea that your phone was attached to the wall at your house. Okay, your phone was not in your pocket. All right, and because and the joke would have been that would have been a mighty long cord. Okay, so the old hotels, the rooms and the people were a lot smaller. If you look at vintage clothing, they look like it's clothing for like 6-year-old kids.
Look at the bathtubs.
Oh yeah, I mean, people were a lot smaller back then, and that's a whole RFK discussion of the kind of junk they put in our food nowadays. But nevertheless, even though there are many rooms, these rooms are tiny, to say the least. Okay, these are tiny rooms, and they are made for a different time of experience. But so yeah, they have a lot of rooms. But I think John's right. The idea was people are going to come down here and play golf or go boating on Lake Jackson.
Fishing.
There would probably be, there would be new things that would open up, because I remember when we went to Mount Dora, they were talking about how the town was dying, and then this big company came in and renovated their old hotel, and all of a sudden the downtown came alive with all these curio shops and stuff, and there was stuff that you could go out on Lake Mary and ride a boat around it because all these moneyed people were coming in. But I think the converse has now happened, and Mr. Blackman said, "There's not going to be none of my friends are going to develop here because we can't trust you." That's and maybe that may be part of the bad blood.
It very well could be, but I mean, again, you take a look at the big picture. Don't look in the mirror at yourself. Look at the big picture for Highlands County and the city of Sebring. The money that it would bring in would be probably would be off the chart. And when that happens, it's going to spawn other situations, whether it's Blackman doing it or somebody else come in and say, wow, look at what they did. Look at what, they got the Kenilworth going on. They got this one going on. Okay, so we think we can come in and build something here because now there's enough population here. There's enough business and foot traffic here. We think we can make our business a go in this area.
And does this not surprise us? Because it is my personal belief, the opinions expressed are my own. It's my personal belief that Highlands and City of Sebring was not chosen by HGTV for anything.
No.
They were not chosen. So there was not some great contest for them to come in and remake the downtown area. It is my belief that was purchased and arranged, okay, by the powers that be. That was a setup deal from the word go, which is another reason that I've given up, because I don't believe them anymore. They, in my opinion is they said something else when they knew what the truth was, and that makes me not believe anything they say anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have redone this downtown. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
They have given away buildings to people for whatever reason. I'm not sure. I have my own personal opinions. I won't say in the air. And they are the beneficiaries of a guy who came in and found an old airport and said, you know what? we could put a race course out here and we could race cars out here. And over the course of the years, Alec Ullman paid money. He paid appearance money for drivers to come out and race. He paid some Indianapolis drivers to come out and drive in the sports car race. He paid world champion sports car drivers to come out and he flew around the rest of the year in Europe saying, oh, we got a great race in Sebring. You ought to come and be part of our race. And he got Sterling Moss, he got Juan Fangio, and he got all of these great guys to come out. And over the course of time, his efforts and he spent no small amount of money and created an atmosphere, because it's based on horse racing. They call it, where the cars are the paddock. That's where they keep the racehorses, in the paddock. Okay. And he created this whole blazer and ascot wearing feeling in this little town in the middle of Sebring, this continental atmosphere.
Almost a culture.
It was a huge cultural explosion, and once a year you could hear people talking in Italian or French or German or whatever, down there racing cars, and they are the beneficiary of that. And why the Blackmans are not on the preferred list of trying to get people who would do the same thing, I don't know. That's why I think there's something that has a bad aroma. What it is, maybe they were sitting in a restaurant and heard the Blackmans say something ugly. I have no idea.
Well,
no idea.
Unfortunately, the losers are going to be the taxpayers of the city of Sebring. Those are going to, if this doesn't happen, they're going to be the losers, because here was their best last chance to salvage the building, rebuild it like he's doing in period architecture, by the way. He's not just slapping it together. He's spending huge amounts of money for the doors and the windows, because they wanted them to be part of the period when this was built. They didn't want to dramatically change it. They wanted to keep it like it was, but just upgrade it, and so on. So it's hard, having been in business for a little while and so on, knowing what your goal is when you're in business, or your goal is to make money. The Blackmans, they want to make money, of course. The city of Sebring should be sitting there like most politicians, licking their chops.
Sure.
Ooh, baby, this is good for me. But for whatever reason, and you're right, it's one stumbling block after another against the Blackmans, I think.
Well, and we talk about the city council like it's some standard thing, but the city councils change. Every election cycle, there's generally new people in there, and over the course of time, the people who were in office in 1986 when this all began are long gone. There's some Mayor Hensley was there, but he's no longer the mayor because he didn't have a vote anyway. But you have people who watch this, but over the course of time, I have yet to see any of the city councils who did not want to hear the cash register ring. Okay, and the county commission's the same way.
Yep.
When they built the Lakeshore Mall, I as a talk show host was on there warning them. I said, look, I know you all want to be like a big county. You want to be a big county. I get it. Okay, but this county will not support a mall like this. Okay, I know that you're as you said, licking your chops. They were waiting for the cash register to ring when this mall came in. And I said, you may get 10 years out of it, maybe, but it's going to be gone. And I was just there for an event last week, and God, I loved you, Jenny Cheek. I love you, but all we saw was the silver sneakers walking around, a bunch of empty storefronts, and just no activity. Were there, for the church, there was a volunteer community. They put on all these little fairs there, which are wonderful little things they put on. But the bottom line was that the county commission and the city tried every way they could to make them annex in, and they couldn't get them to annex in. Mm-hmm. In fact, they wanted to hold up water and sewer services, but at that time there was this organization called the Sebring Utilities Commission, who had no allegiance to the city council, and they said, look, we're going to run water to the Sebring City Council, or to the Sebring Mall, Lakeshore Mall. Why? Because it'll make our cash register ring. And if they don't annex, too bad. That's not our problem. Okay? So, yes, the city officials, and I would say that anybody within the sound of our voices know it's not an exclusive club. They all want to hear the cash register ring.
But is there another issue and that is kissing the right ring
at the right time.
at the right time?
I don't know. I don't know.
That's somebody of the town this size, perhaps there's certain doors that are closed until they decide to be open.
Well, when I came, I learned that there were large bunion-encrusted toes, and you had to learn the names of the founders and the names of the movers and shakers, and I was always very cautious, and they'd say, wait, well, I said, I don't know, tell me about it, and there was a famous story about somebody who worked for an organization in one of the cities in Highlands County. And they were getting a tour from one of the long-term progeny of the founders of that area, and they were driving around looking at things. And this person who was in this new organization made a comment that they were worried about a tree that was growing too close to a right-of-way of one of the streets, and said, they probably really need to take that tree out. And they said suddenly it got very cold in the car, and there was silence. And they drove along, and the person, the pioneer progeny, turned to this individual and said, my grandmother planted that tree. And they shook their head and they said, oh my God, they're related to the foliage. Okay? And so, yes. Yeah, I mean, could they have been sitting,
Sure.
at the local restaurant and had one of the black men say something that was an affront, a slur, a slap in the face?
You shall never pass that way again.
Yeah, you shall never pass. I was just privy to a conversation of some people who other people did not know, and they were having quite a spirited conversation about some plans that they had, which were, as a dear friend of mine referred to it, the forces of evil. But they had no idea that the people they were sitting behind were paying any attention. Apparently, they were paying rapt attention. So, I don't, you don't know. You don't know. I saw a Lifetime Movie Network movie one time where this guy is just after this woman all the time and trying to, and finally she gets him cornered, and he says, why? He says, you cut me off. It was for road rage. So what have the Blackmans done? I don't think they know, because of I had the same problem with Meta. I have a problem with one of my pages, and they said, well, I said, what did I do wrong? So we can't tell you. I said, well, well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. That's not helpful. Tell us, what do we need to do to make this right? How do we make this so that, do they have to call in Donald Trump to make the deal?
Don't know, but like I said, it's. I thought at that meeting we were at when they voted,
That was it.
there's a majority vote to go forward, give it to the Blackmans, and now all of a sudden it comes back again like day old bread. And I don't know. It just seems like there's a concerted effort by some people, whether they're on the city council or elsewhere, that for whatever reason want to fight the Blackmans almost every inch of the way. And it's hard, very hard, as an outsider looking at it from his perspective, the Blackman's perspective, as to what he's doing and what he's planning on doing for the community and whatnot. So it's just hard to understand why you would not say, okay, look, we can make this work for both of us. All right.
We talked yesterday about how the socialists, they may have gone underground, but their whole focus on fundamentally transforming the United States is far from over. They're still working. You don't see all this LGBTQ and these furry people and all this other stuff out in front of everybody, but it's still going on. So I wondered if, and I think the more I think about it, the more I think it was a 3-2 vote and not a 4-1 vote.
No.
Because when they got to the last vote,
Mm-hmm.
I said to myself, here it comes.
Right.
And they voted in favor of the Blackmans.
Right.
And I turned to my wife and I said, well, I lost lunch on that. You know, I would have bet somebody lunch that they would have been 3-2 the other way.
Yep.
And, but I think the people who do not want it to happen have not stopped trying to undermine it. And I just, the one thing that I find, and I wish that I could get Mr. Blackman to speak to us about this, because it sounds like there is somebody's not being accurate about what they're, because I watched this and they were saying, well, the thing that disturbs me the most is they don't say anything, that there's been no response. And apparently, in a very public statement, Mr. Blackman has said, oh, that's not true. Well, then, can you show us? I mean, not that I don't trust you, but somebody show us the emails. Somebody show us the emails where you said, yeah, I responded to that, or I called you back, or I mean, show us where we're at, because right now we are, well, I think the Blackmans are not going to apply again. I think, didn't the last time they said this is our last deal?
Well, I think they may have said that, but I don't think now they're another 2 or 3 months ongoing with the rebuilding of the hotel. So they probably invested another, I don't know, a couple $1 million since that last vote. So I don't think I would be very surprised if this came to a point where they would throw up their hands and say, okay, we're done, we're gone.
It's a walk away.
Because I think they've got so much time, effort, and money invested, it's almost impossible. And I like I said, I just don't understand why the city council people can't say, look, it's bigger than just you. It's bigger than you, Mr. Council Person, or you, Mrs. Council Person. It's bigger than you. The big picture is the taxpayers of the city of Sebring and the county of Highlands County.
What?
Those are the people that are going to be the victims.
And you mentioned the windows, because as I heard the discussion from Mr. Blackman, he said the reason we're replacing the windows is 2 reasons. Number 1 is that they're not historically accurate. And number 2 is that they were, I'll use the word inexpensive, but I think other people have used the word cheap. Mm-hmm. And they put them in to get them in. But he said they would not have lasted a big storm.
Right.
They would not have lasted a big storm. And the first thing he did was put a new roof on it to keep any more damage from happening, from the water getting in.
Yep.
But they have gone, as you say, to know the windows that they had were, I don't know if they're custom made, but they were certainly custom designed to fit into the holes they needed, and they've gone to no small amount of money to make sure that they're right. Because to quote a guy, they called him John the Gunsmith, who didn't sugarcoat anything. He would tell you this straight up, and he'd say, "You buy it cheap, you buy it twice." You know, in other words, you buy a cheap gun, you don't like the gun, then you go back and get a gun you really do want. But so you might as well just spent the money the first time. So there, and I just saw, as you said, a post on their Harder Hall thing that said. They're putting in the great doors, those huge doors that they had there that open into the back portico there. Mm-hmm. You know, and I reached out to the girl that runs that, and she's just a slip of a thing. And she looks like she's like 17 years old. I don't know how old she is. Of course, at my age, they all look like they're 17. But I said, you know, would you be interested in being on and talking about this? Or would Mr. Blackman like to talk about just the things that are happening at Harder Hall? And I crickets. I get nothing, you know. So
I don't know. Well, we got jump on. I was just one other thing, just a couple of things on Governor DeSantis. He has given the state employees 4 days off, 5 days off for the 4th of July. No other state has done that, but what he's done is going to shut down all state offices July 2nd through the 6th. So he's made a big play. I don't know why he would want to do that, other than maybe get more cadues with the state employees. But no other state seems to have done that. But for whatever reason, he has. So they're going to have like a 5-day period where they're going to be off work for the
That's
state.
pretty nice.
That's very nice. I was never able to do that in the factory. Okay. I mean, I was lucky if I could get one extra day, all right, for something and so on. And then one other thing, this is again DeSantis, and I think, maybe Blaze and Goliath too along with it, but they're saying Florida school districts are crying poverty, i.e. Highlands County,
Absolutely.
sitting on land they refuse to count. In other words, they have a lot of school buildings. If they don't need them, why don't they sell them to make money that they can use for the shortfall that they're facing because of the fact that, the students are leaving the school system and the state is losing money. The city's local communities are losing money because all these kids are leaving the public school systems.
Well, the Highlands County schools charge more for their 11,000 students and staff, okay, than the county charges us for the running of the entire county, which includes the sheriff's office, the clerk of the courts, the property appraiser, and the supervisor of elections.
Wow.
Tax collector pays for himself, but those other are included in the county budget. Okay, so I mean, they don't charge as much as the school board charges. I know where they could save $200,000 a year. All
Well,
right.
you take a look at it. Lake County is short $35 million in their school budget.
Wow.
Volusia County is short $25.8 million, and Lee County is staring at $92 million deficit for their schools. So there are some huge amounts of money that these schools have lost because they've lost so many students.
But the last two superintendents of schools in Highlands counties both have R's after their name. Okay, and most of the school board members who've sat there, there's one I now. There's one guy who claims to be an independent. He was a Democrat up until the time he ran. Then all of a sudden he was an independent. But they're all R's. And unfortunately, I have, and on more than one occasion, told the school board members, it's time for you to stop playing nice. You've got to get tough with these people, and they won't do it. They won't get tough with the supervisor elections. So. Anything else?
Just one other thing. As part of this, it says that the Florida CFO audit finds $2.7 billion in local government waste. Palm Beach, $344 million has been identified as waste, fraud, and abuse. In just Palm Beach County, $344 million, and so on. So, and this is the CFO is Jimmy Petronas and whatnot. So Florida, for all of its good things, has some financial issues.
Oh yeah,
Okay, has some definite financial issues.
Yeah, you and I both have heard the wailing and gnashing of teeth about how the student they're here in Highlands County. They are projecting they're going to lose 400 students next year. Okay,
Yep.
and that's 400 times $8,000 a student. All right,
Yep.
and they're talking about, well, do we consolidate schools or do we get rid of staff? I know that there was an effort to talk about the district office and how much money and the superintendent did not bring forward what the school board had asked for. And only one school board member even deigned to mention it. Okay. I said, well, I thought this is not the meeting. I thought we were supposed to be talking about, and she doesn't want to get rid of one administrator. Not one person out of the district office needs to go. They all need to be her staff, her 27 ladies in waiting, like Michelle Obama. They can't go anyplace. But no one is asking this question. Gosh, why are they all leaving the government schools? What is so attractive about going to a Christian school, a private school, a home school? What is so attractive? You would think as a parent, you have a government school that will drive a bus to your door and pick up your little cherub and cart them off for the day, feed them, and bring them home. All right? Sounds pretty convenient to me. Okay, but no. We're going to send our kid to a private school where I got to drive you every morning and drop you off and pick you up. Okay? And I got to pay for that. It may be the $8,000 and maybe a little bit more, and maybe a little bit more than what I'm getting from the government to send you there. So what is so attractive about going to a school that's not the government school that is causing them to leave. Now, in the Highlands County school system, one of the school board members, who does not have an R after his name, I might add, says, "Well, you know what we ought to do? We'll just start a marketing campaign." And I said, "Pal, you're selling Edsels, okay? You can run ads all day, but it's kind of hard to sell an unpopular product. I could, if I got the 6 numbers, I could try to sell fidget spinners all day long, but I'd still have a case full of them. So it's not trying to sell it; it's trying to figure out what's wrong. And I guess that's a question nobody wants to ask.
Well, I go back to the fact that we've seen how they lowered the grade levels, A, B, C, D, and F, lowered them to the point where almost anybody could get a diploma today. So they brag about the fact, 89.5% of our students get a diploma every year.
But
Okay, can they read? Can they write? Can they spell? Can they do any math? So, no, in a lot of cases, no, they can't. Okay, so these kids are getting a diploma, walking out the door, and then they have to face reality. If I want to go to college? Oh, you're going to have to take remedial reading or remedial math or something in order to get in. So they're not doing the kids any service at all by graduating them just for the sake of graduating them if they don't have the knowledge to walk out the door and be able to go on to their next step.
I was back, and this is not new. I was working this is how old it's been. I was at a record store, and we sold little appliances as well. And one thing we sold was clock radios. And this kid came in with his clock radio, and he was complaining that he was late to work every day because his alarm didn't go off. And we said, "Well, let's have a look at this." And I said, "What time do you get up?" "Well, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning." And I said, "You know that this alarm clock is set for 6 o'clock in the evening. It's not AM, it's PM." And there was this dial, and it was just staring at us. And one of my co-workers said, "There's 24 hours in a day." And he looks at us and goes, 24 hours in a day. And this is a high school kid. Yeah, there's 24 hours in a day. Somewhere along the line, you should realize that 6 o'clock comes up twice. Okay, and you would think that somewhere they would have internalized this information. And we see it. It was Gwendolyn Sanders Hill who got the 2.0. If you wanted to be in any extra, started off with football, but then it spread to any extracurricular activity. If you wanted to be in the chess club, okay, if you wanted to be in the pep club, any club at school, you had to maintain a 2.0 average, which included sports, baseball, football, basketball, track, whatever. Okay. And she did that because, there were these kids, they were great stars in high school, but now you can't hold a decent conversation with them. That was her words. And so this is not new, but there does not seem to be any effort to make sure that these kids have, John, let's say they want to be a plumber and you got to move so many GPM. Well, what's GPM? Well, that's gallons per minute. Oh, yeah, you know how much a gallon of water is, don't you? Go down to Publix and look. It's on the shelf. It'll show you. It's in a jug all by itself. That's a gallon, and we got to move 24 of those a minute, through this pipe. Okay, so you got remedial math.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to.
Right.
You don't have to find a value of X, but you certainly have to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide.
Well, and again, it's just a disservice to the students, and it's a waste of time. The other problem is, it may not be a big number, but they have special situation for the kids that are problem students. Either they don't come to school, they have high absenteeism, or when they're in school, they're very disruptive. They either want to get into fights or they disturb the teacher, whatever it is. There was 87 of those kids in that special class, the special facility, which that's one of the things they wanted to do was shut down that facility, put the kids back into what I call general population.
Exactly.
And so on. So if they have a attitude problem and you kept them in a special facility because of that attitude problem, now you're going to put them back into the facility where they can have an attitude problem with the regular students and the teachers.
And disturb everybody else.
Yeah, just because they wanted to, let's cut that funding over there instead of cutting this one over here. We looked at it How many people were there that made over $100,000 as part of the school board administration?
Either 6 or 9.
There was a lot of people that made over $100,000 a year. And let me tell you, I looked at the numbers, and then you drop down to the people that are making 90,000, 80,000, 70,000. A lot of them. The teachers and the janitors were probably near the bottom. Okay, the teachers are roughly, I think, around 40, maybe 50,000, depending on tenure and all that. But,
So I'm minority. I'm minority.
oh yes,
Yes,
absolutely,
absolutely.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And when you're on the ground, who do you need the most to educate the students? The teachers. That's who you need. The
That's who you
administrator.
need.
The administrator does not educate the students. The teachers educate the students. And
Yeah.
so it's very frustrating that they didn't see this coming. They didn't plan for it. They knew this was going to happen once the state signed that bill where they could reimburse parents to send their kids for alternative education. You knew they were going to start losing students. You knew that. If you didn't know it, then you didn't belong in your position. That's for sure.
I think that there is some actual. There needs to be some actual understanding of who's responsible for this and how is in the world have they not done anything about it.
I know.
And there are people. We'll point the fingers.
Oh, they have
Next time.
they have nothing they can do now. It's here and now. They're faced with it for here through eternity. As long as the state has that reimbursement program, they're going to continue to lose
But
students.
Sean, it was happening before then.
Yeah, but not to the degree that it happened now.
No,
Because
well, the thing is, okay, it was happening. But let's say I wanted to send my little cherub to a local private school.
Mhm.
I'm still paying that $7,800 to them, even though my kid wasn't in there.
yes,
Okay,
Yes.
so even though they were losing population, they weren't losing money,
right.
and they could see. I for many times I tried to find out. Do we know how many of these kids are not in school here? And that was never a number that was available.
Mhm.
Okay, but when they said, okay, the money follows the kid.
Mhm.
Whoa. All of a sudden, it's a big problem. It's a big problem because you're not paying for your kid. And we saw this in New York. They want to tax all the billionaires and millionaires that are there. A lot of them, they have an apartment in New York, but they're not ever there.
Mhm.
They come in to see, Judy wants to see cats, and so, okay, so they fly in, they stay in their apartment for a week, and then they leave. The other 360 days out of the year, they're not there, or 350 days out of the year. They're not there. They're not using police, fire, and ambulance. They're not using sewer. They're not using any of the city services, but they're paying taxes.
Mhm.
Okay. So these people have been getting money for people they didn't have to take care of. And so all of a sudden, and that's why they blame it on HB1, is because all of a sudden they lost their money. They didn't care about the kid as long as they got the money.
Mhm.
And I've been told that that's why they really, really dislike tardy students. Because if you're tardy, you're not on the count. And if you're not on the count, you don't get paid for that day. Now, if you're out of school, so what? They don't have to feed you lunch. The teacher has to put up with you in class, whatever. You're not there. But if you're there and you're using the services and you're not paying for them, that's when they get upset.
Well, and like we know, and this happens a large part of the country, any child up to 18 years old can walk in off the street every day and get breakfast and lunch at the schools.
Is that right?
Up to 18 years old. Yes, sir. Up to
Off the
18 years
street,
old.
right off the street.
Off the street, 18 years old, up to 18. You can walk into the school facility, get a free breakfast and a free lunch, and so on. So that, again, we're paying for it, and because you pay for it ultimately through your taxes, but that is in fact true.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's like the Fram man, pay me now or pay me later.
Mhm.
Because if we have kids that are not getting the education, I mean, you wonder sometimes when these folks hire. We were at a fast food restaurant, and it took a long time for us to get what we needed.
It wasn't fast.
No, it was not
Oh.
fast, and it was not well administrated. And I said to the people who were there, who were kind of groused, I said, "This is why you're paying a small amount of money.
Mhm.
Okay, it's because these are the kids they have to hire.
Mhm.
Okay, and it also goes for discount stores. And I mean, the people who there was a time, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I know for a while there was a restaurant that did not have the names of that did not have numbers on the cash register. They had pictures of what the item was.
Mhm.
No.
Okay. And
No.
it would, if you bought a hamburger, they would push the button that had the little hamburger on it. Or if you ordered, if you ordered a fish dinner or a Happy Meal, a kid's meal. I'm sorry. You would push that button. Okay. And if you ordered a big soft drink, you'd push this button. If you ordered a little soft drink, you'd push this button. And in the back, I swear, this is actually because I saw it with my own eyes. They would have different shapes of chicken nuggets or chicken pieces that would go in the dinners. And they had little pictures of each
You're kidding.
that would go in, so they would be able to you remember when you were a kid, you had the circle and the square and the star, and put it through the whole thing. They would match up to make sure that they had one of each of these little shaped chicken bites to have. Okay, and it's because they were not well educated. They didn't say they say, take one out of each of these bins. No, they had little pictograms up there. And these kids, trying to ring up you want to send one of these kids into a tailspin? Your bill comes to $8.76. And you give them a $10 bill and 76 cents. Well, that's too much money. What's this for? Is it, well, see, it's $8.76. And if I give you $10.76, then you give me $2 back. What's too much money?
Well, last week I went to a restaurant for lunch, and I think my bill was like $12.84.
Okay.
Okay. I gave the girl a $20 bill, and I swear, and she looked like she was probably late teens, maybe 20, but probably late teens. And she stood there at the cash register and stared at it for what I thought was an eternity. I think trying to decide, and I knew in my head exactly how much I was supposed to get back. And she stood there and she looked at the register and looked at the register. And then finally she decided to give me some money back. But I mean, I just stood there and I said, oh my God, girl. I said, this is so simple. How are you going to make it through life if you're having trouble?
Maybe for you.
Yeah.
But when I worked at Woolworths, you were required to count the change back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
and I would go, it's a $20.84.
Mm-hmm.
85, 90, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Mm-hmm.
and count it back out.
Right.
3, 4, 5, and 5 is 10. Is
Right.
$30.
Yep.
Here's your change.
Yep.
And you're required to, God help us, count backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was long before they were launching rockets.
Yep.
But these children have not been taught those skills and had not been required to learn those skills. And
No.
it's sad because they're the ones who are paying for it.
But if they got a diploma when they walked out the door, it's meaningless. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. It's meaningless. If you can't function in the everyday life, like making change or other kinds of simplistic things, I call it. I mean, how are you going to make your way? Or you're going to spend another number of years trying to re-educate yourself so you can do the elementary things.
Yeah.
It's frustrating, but it's also very sad.
And
Very sad. Very
Yeah.
sad.
This
And
kid
I-
has spent 12 years in that facility, and what have they got when they walk out the door?
And I put the blame on the buck stops at the superintendent of schools and the school board. That's where the buck stops, because they have done things in my eyes that have masked the problem.
Mhm.
Okay, when they knew the problem was coming, and I've said this out loud, they knew the problem was coming. They knew they were losing kids, but they weren't losing money, so who cared?
Mhm.
Okay, and I said, you're losing kids. You better find out why.
Mhm.
You're losing kids. Well, it doesn't matter. We're still getting the money. But no. That's not the issue. The issue is, why are you losing students? And then all of a sudden, oh, we're losing the money too? Oh, crap.
You're not getting the money.
You're not getting the money.
No.
And so now, all of a sudden, it's a problem.
Mhm.
It's a problem. When it's been a problem for a long time.
Yeah.
And it was ignored. And I think there has been a huge shell game going on of moving things here, moving things there, and I will tell you that I have been told as a news director, there is a huge culture of fear in the school system.
Let me just back up on this whole thing. When they say you're still getting the money, you say, where is it? Where is that money?
Oh, it's going into the school system. At that time, it was $7,800 a kid.
But it's gone. It
But
left the school system.
now they said, oh, that $1,700 you were getting, we're going to put that with the kid. And wherever the parents decide to send the kid, the money's going to go there too. They're, wait, what? What? And they're on the phone right now to the accounting department. What does that mean? How much money is that for us? Because there are a lot of, in my estimation, and we've talked about this, many overpaid executives in there. There are many overpaid executives, some of whom I think are going to be retiring soon. And as they used to say, take the money and run. Okay. And they're going to be getting out while the getting's good.
So they either have forgotten what they learned at one time or they never learned at all.
I think that they're going to ride that pony as long as they can, as long as that pony's still
they
upright.
get reimbursed for every school lunch they serve too. So if you take 400 kids out of the system, that's 400 lunches you're no longer serving. They don't get paid for that anymore.
Oh, and I have been told, at least in the olden days, that was a cost. That was a plus cost factor. In other words, it cost you. I'm going to pick out some numbers out of the air. It cost you $1 worth of food to give the kid, but you got reimbursed $1.25 from the government. So you actually made 25. We're making $0.25 a kid, which you go over a few thousand students, that begins to add up, day after day after day. And there was an effort to put kids on the free and reduced price. And I know of a couple who were told this. They said, we make too much money to be on the free and reduced price lunches. Mm-hmm. And they said, and they were told, by whom, I don't know, but they were told, don't worry, no one ever looks at that anyway.
No.
Okay?
No.
So you can go ahead. And they came to me and they said, I know that if we do this, the first people that they're going to find that violated the rules is going to be us. And we're going to be on the hook for Lord only knows how much money.
All lunches now are free.
Well,
No students pay.
Yeah. They're not free. Okay.
Well, they're free to the student, free to the parents.
Yeah, but back then you had to be on this program.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And they did it. Why? Because they were making money on it.
Yeah.
So the more kids they had on it, the more money they're going to make.
Yep.
When
parents had to register their child for that reduced or free lunch, you could do it online.
Oh yeah.
You never went in to talk to anybody. You could do it online. Fill out the information for Johnny.
It's transparent.
Johnny got a free lunch. Yeah.
And they were doing it over the summer for summer school, even kids who weren't going to summer school.
Yes.
So and now you've got elections coming up, and you've got candidates that both are incumbents. And I would suggest that people need to go to the school board and start asking some real hard questions. Although they give you 3 minutes and tell you to go sit down. And Dale's been used to this one. I think they give you 5, And at least you're on record as saying, what the heck are you people doing?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yep. But we're out of time for again today, and we didn't even get a chance to talk to Chat GPT. We'll have to do that next week. All right. Thank you so much. I want to remind you, the best coffee in the world is Strangely Warm Coffee. It is coffee that really tastes like coffee. Steve and Jerry do a wonderful job. It's faith-led, it's community-rooted, and he is obsessed with the quality. There's no fillers, okay? It's 100% Arabica coffee, no bite, no filler beans, hand-roasted right here in Sebring, Florida. And if you live here, I would say go on down 161 South Commerce Avenue, have some coffee. He's always got coffee on the brew. Peruvian, Honduran, Nicaraguan, Guatemalan, all roasted right there, right before your very eyes. You want the dark roast, you want the light roast. They can do it. Now, whole bean, ground, K-pods, It's all right there. And you can have it delivered to your door if you're outside the area. Just go to strangelywarmed.com, Strangely Warmed Coffee Roastery on the Facebook, or give them a call, 863-273-9404. Barry Foster, Dale Pflug, John Larsen, as we continue to look for truth, justice, and the American way, and we'll see you next time.